I know what love is.
I love you. You complete me.
I may have never been kissed on Notting Hill, but I found a podcast to get my fill. Maybe I'm clueless, but this is good as it gets. Paige, Mikey, and Todd serving the best of my best friend's wedding. Rom-coms, true love, and heavy petting. Be crying on the couch, but we're not forgetting that most of these flicks are trash. We relive it again, all romance in the podcast.
As you wish.
I've been doing a lot of things. The thing is, I love you.
Looks like love at first sight to me.
Thank you for tuning into Romancing the Pod. You had us at hello. I'm Paige Wesley.
And I'm Todd Schlosser. And this week we have a very special guest joining us, Kyle Shire.
Oh, hi. It's me.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Kyle.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so sorry for being so late. I want it on record that I was late, and I'm sorry.
Oh, it is fine. It is fine.
It's all good.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, you made us watch...
Do you want to see where Mikey is first?
Oh, shit. Yeah, so Mikey is on vacation.
And is currently day drunk texting us.
Yes.
Good for him.
So we have gotten some interesting pictures from Mikey from the beach.
Yes.
So Mikey will be back next week, joining us for whatever movie is happening after this, which I think is my pick.
I think it's actually Mikey's pick, but it's going to be yours.
We're going to skip Mikey. It's going to be my pick. All right. But Kyle, this week you made us watch, because you picked this movie, you made us watch The Truth About Cats and Dogs.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you've seen this movie before.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. This is a classic. This is a movie that me and my mom would watch. Like, she would just have her Bartles and James, and I would just be, sneaking her Bartles and James. And this was...
I'm picturing like a crazy straw around your back, behind her back, down into her drink.
Yeah.
Just like around the shoulders. Yeah.
Essentially.
I love it. So did you like this movie growing up? Are you like, yes, this is what love is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, no. Kyle, no.
Loved this movie so much. It is indicative of every single romantic comedy that programmed me for absolute devastation and failure upon entering adulthood. And is... I mean, if, in case your listeners have not picked up by my voice, I'm a big old gay. So the heteronormative romancing ran deep with me, and it took me a while to deprogram that. But yeah, this was like one of the bricks in that wall for me.
That you had to then unbrick, right?
That I had to unbrick, exactly. But for the record, though, I do have a lot of respect for this movie just because Janeane Garofalo went through a lot of shit with this movie.
Oh, did she?
And Janeane Garofalo is also one of my she is an iconic comedian. She's fucking incredible, and I think she actually does a tremendous job in this movie. Same. And it's got Uma Thurman, who's gay excellence. She's not gay, but she's gay excellence. And it's got Ben Chaplin in it, and I don't know what the fuck happened to him, but he was real hot in the 90s.
You know what? I had never heard that name before, and after this movie, I was like, where did he go? What's he doing?
Is he farming goats? Where did he go?
He is farming goats, actually. Yeah.
He's raising sheep in Bali.
So, Paige, was this the first time you had seen this movie?
This is the first time I'd seen this movie, but when I pulled it up to watch it today, I realized that this was one of those covers in Blockbuster that I used to see all the time.
Yeah. I
had a visceral memory of walking past it in Blockbuster and wondering what it was about. And I was just like, oh, I'm finally watching this. Okay, cool.
My life has finally brought me here.
My life has brought me here to a movie where I see myself, if I had remained single, depicted in a film. So that was an interesting... I was like, she's short, brunette, has a cat, basically has a podcast, and makes cheese, even if that part's fictional. Okay, all right. Some harsh truths in this film.
I feel like Paige learned something about herself while watching this movie.
I feel like I saw there are many things in this movie that I feel like I had to unlearn as someone who is what I would call not conventionally attractive. Not attractive. Just not what society says is attractive. Sure. Baby dear Uma Thurman attractive.
Baby dear Uma Thurman.
She does have a baby deer quality
she
to her
does,
in this film.
Paige and I were talking about that before the podcast started, and I think she's aged very, very well. Let's just say that.
Oh, absolutely. She's got that. She's got those the rare good Scandinavian genes, because the rest of us Scandinavian people, we get to 30 and our bodies just are like, nope, you look like an old shoelace now.
Vikings were supposed to be dead at this point in their lives.
Yeah,
I don't know. My husband's got some Scandinavian blood, and he just looks more and more like a Viking as it goes.
That's because your husband is a beautiful freak of nature.
Yes,
Yeah,
Kyle, thank you.
bit.
Hardcore agree.
Little bit.
So this is the first time I had seen this movie. I don't understand the notion that Janeane Garofalo is unattractive.
That's the biggest thing.
Don't understand that. I will grant you that Uma Thurman is like 90s model, very skinny, like emaciated, pretty, quote unquote. But Janeane Garofalo is just a short, pretty brunette. She is not an unattractive woman by any means. So when like everyone was calling her ugly, I was like, really? Did you mean that?
I mean, I feel like she thinks she's ugly, and that's what the movie is trying to focus on. It doesn't do a great job necessarily, because many other people treat her badly, allegedly for her looks.
It's in the opening titles.
Yeah. Well, and more than once, the lead, like, calls Uma Thurman beautiful and then turns to her and says smart, and I'm like, that's hurtful. Like, this is, how dare you?
Well, and right at the end, he almost calls her ugly. Right at the end. And then literally like 2 scenes after that, like 5 minutes movie time after that, they're like making out at the sunset. I'm like, no one should be together at the end of this movie.
No one.
Like, everyone needs to take a fucking beat and like do some soul searching and realize that maybe lying to everybody or just being an incredibly shallow person, like everyone has their own issues to work on, but like no one should be with anyone at the end of this movie.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, and we can get to it when we talk about the end. But like it one thing, because we are talking about Janeane Garofalo up here, and I just want to say up front, going into this film, and I like to add an extra syllable, this piece of cinema, Janeane Garofalo actually lost like 30 pounds before she did this role.
Really?
So like, Janeane Garofalo had to lose 30, because like, first of all, Janeane Garofalo's tiny. She's like a teeny tiny little person.
She says in the movie she's 5'1". I don't know if that's accurate, but that's pretty short.
She's a little taller. She and I are about the same height.
Okay.
I'm 5'2", so we're pretty close.
Yeah.
I've been near her at a comedy club, and we were like eye to eye.
Okay.
Yeah, but like 30 pounds on a 5'1" frame is a lot.
Yeah,
that's a lot. And it's surreal to think that someone as smart and talented and also like naturally pretty, I would argue that she is naturally pretty. It's weird that she had to do that much work to play a quote unquote unattractive woman in Hollywood.
Think about how much of a mindfuck that would be, that they're like, hey, Janeane Garofalo, we want you to be the ugly character, but you have to lose 30 pounds.
Yeah.
That is harsh.
And I mean, I think it's kind of a thing of the times, because at the same time is when, so Tina Fey was doing Weekend Update on SNL at the same time, and she had to lose 30 pounds to do Weekend Update. And she's not a large woman at all.
No.
And it was just this accepted norm, which is messed up. And it's why I cried really hard when Kathy Najimy shows up in Dumplin' to tell her heavier daughter to just be who she is. But
we gotta do Dumplin', because I have not seen that movie, and I'm like putting it off so we can watch it for this podcast.
I'm gonna sob so hard.
I mean, I will too. I cry at all these stupid movies.
So let's get into the actual movie.
Yeah, let's just jump into the movie.
Yes.
I do want to talk about the end, because this movie was a very different movie before the studios got a hold of it. Let's put it that way.
That makes sense.
I do want to highlight that if you are watching this on YouTube, if you're streaming it through YouTube, the description of the movie is bonkers.
Oh, yeah?
It's like 3 paragraphs long. Like, it's more than just like a blurb, and it lists like every hobby Janeane Garofalo has, and then every hobby that Uma Thurman has, and then is like, and they're fighting over this guy, and that's it. Like, it goes on forever.
They're not really fighting. They fight for like a minute or two.
Yeah, it literally is 2 scenes. Just because Ben Chaplin doesn't call her stupid, he calls Uma Thurman smart, and that instantly turns her on.
He calls Uma Thurman. We'll get to it later.
Yeah,
We'll spoil
yeah.
it.
We'll get
We're going to table it. We'll get to it later.
Table.
So we open during the credits on Janeane Garofalo, aka Abby, walking through the park, down the street to her office building, where people literally don't just ignore her, they act like she's not there. But they're like actively trying to get through revolving doors and things through her body. Like, she is corporeal. They do not care.
Yeah, like a guy opens the door for like 3 quote unquote attractive women and then like goes in, like cuts her off, goes in, and she's just like, I guess I'm not here then, and then like sneaks in behind them.
Well, and everyone's a foot taller than her.
Yes.
Which I think is really, really like they worked to make it look as drastic as it was.
Yeah, it was like some Peter Jackson forced perspective shit. Like
Yes.
Everyone's on Apple boxes except for her in that elevator.
I think those women were on like those like 6-inch lucite stilettos or something. Because I feel like those women were they were like someone looked at that frame and was like, those women aren't tall enough. The message isn't being communicated hard enough. It must be more specific.
You have unlocked an early fun fact.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I bring this up because it is something that I have experienced in the industry. Janeane Garofalo often had to stand on Apple boxes to be in frame with Uma Thurman.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does, because she's tall.
Yeah, 'cause Uma Thurman's like 6'1".
Yeah.
And so there's a foot of difference between them, which has happened multiple times with myself and cult podcast co-host Armando Torres, who is 6'5", and I am 5'2". So this is a common occurrence in our world. But yes, so frequently, whenever you see Janeane Garofalo standing and not moving much, it's because she's on an Apple box.
I do want to point out, though, that the opening to this movie is like classic 90s kind of like location pan and scan.
Yes.
Yes.
Of like, I don't know, that there was a moment in the 90s when that was very hot. Like you see it again in Romeo and Michelle's High School Reunion. Like,
Yes.
you have to show off Santa Monica like this.
Well, that's how I was able to find out how much her apartment cost.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I know exactly where this duplex is. So she makes it into the lobby, but then they also try to stop her from getting on the elevator. She does manage to get on, and they're like verbal about her not wanting her to be there.
Yeah.
Like to a point that I don't think I've ever been that outwardly hostile to somebody getting on an elevator with me. We cut to her radio show, which is called The Truth About Cats and Dogs. It's
the title of the movie.
Yes, it is.
the title of the movie. And she's giving some advice to a guy whose basset hound has a cough. She's giving advice to a guy who let his cat lick his face for 3 hours.
Oh, man.
And
yeah, like honestly, the only reason your cat should lick your face for 3 hours is if you have died.
yes, and they're trying to eat your skin,
Yes.
of course.
Yeah. Like there's no other reason why you should let them do
Yeah.
that.
How many does it take to get to the center of your skull? 1, a 2,
3
3
hours.
Yeah,
Listen, if I die in my house and my cats have to eat my corpse, I'm okay with it.
me
That's all
too.
I'm
Me
saying.
Yeah,
too.
if my last gift to you can be sustenance, all power to you. I have 5 cats, Kyle. 5 cats and 2 dogs. I would go quickly in this house.
Just bones.
Yeah.
We found a stripped skeleton in the attic.
Like the scarabs in the mummy, just like.
Sometimes I'm afraid if I sleep too hard, it's over for me.
Don't take any NyQuil.
Biscuit's like, I don't know, man. He's been asleep for 7.5 hours. I think we should just go at it. Biscuit's my fat kitty.
Mimsy's my fat kitty.
Oh.
Big dum dum. Anyway.
The movie sets up this radio show as basically she gives advice to people about their pets over the phone, which seems A, irresponsible, but B, I can't imagine that she would have enough content to have a daily show.
Yeah.
But it is Santa Monica, so
She's like Click and Clack the car guys, but instead of for cars, she's for pets.
yeah. Or like those fantasy football people, but for pet health.
Yeah. It doesn't make
Yeah.
sense to me as a job, but I'm happy for her. Like, she would just have a podcast now. Like, that is what her job would be.
Yeah.
I will prepare you for later on in Fun Facts. I budgeted out what she would be making money-wise as a radio DJ, but then modern day as a podcast.
Oh, man.
Oh.
That's going to reveal some harsh truth that I don't think our audience is ready for.
You're welcome.
Yeah. This is a labor of love, you all. Let's just say that.
She comes home to a gorgeous floofy tuxedo cat, and they cuddle up to read, and there's a knock at the door, and it's somebody looking for Noelle, who is her neighbor.
And
I
it sounds like
should
it's
say.
not the first time this guy has been there doing this exact thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Because he's like drunk or he's just an idiot or whatever. We found out he's an asshole too. So like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So this is where we kind of first realize that she has because I don't even think we've met Uma Thurman at this point. We haven't seen
We
her.
haven't. No, we hear her in this scene, but we don't meet her
Right.
until later. Yeah.
But the implication is there is a hot party girl neighbor that the men are flocking to, and she's constantly having to field her calls, essentially.
Yeah. And you mean calls in the very, very traditional sense of someone
I
showing up
do.
at your house. Yeah.
The suitors that come to call on her. Exactly.
Noelle, do you have another gentleman caller?
Turn up the candle, father.
How do you turn up a can? You know what? I'll figure it out. I'll Google it.
Historically, courting candles were spiral, and they're long, long twists of candles. So if your father liked the suitor, he would turn the candle up so they had more time, because when it burns down, they have to leave.
Okay.
Yeah.
2 questions.
You're
Paige,
welcome.
I don't understand why you know this. And wow, thank you for that information.
My family has vacationed in Colonial Williamsburg multiple times. My mother owns a courting candle. You're welcome.
I will just say this because Mikey's not here to defend himself. Your dad reached out and wants to have dinner with us when he's in town.
Yes.
And he referred to himself as my West Coast dad. So I feel like if one of us is becoming a member of your immediate family, it's definitely me, Paige.
They didn't use the courting candle. I think my mom got it because it looks cool. Anyway, we cut to her doing her show again the next day, and someone's calling in about their fish that's depressed that they have sedated.
Yeah, can you sedate a fish?
I don't think you can.
I just think it kills it.
Who would go through that much trouble for a fish?
I know.
I don't, unless it's like a real expensive, saltwater tropical fish bullshit or whatever. I don't know. It's strange. I'm sure there's some fish advocate out there that's screaming at their podcast
How dare
apparatus
you.
right now. I apologize.
My fish is my soulmate.
She gives a very specific solution, like the caller does. So I was like,
Yeah.
maybe this is actually a thing. People sedate fish. I don't know.
Between this and the turtle later, I couldn't figure out if these were real tips from actual vets or if they were just making shit up.
I have a personal fun fact about the turtle later.
Okay, we'll get to it when we get to
Yeah.
it then.
I think the latter, personally. It sounds like some screenwriter logic, personally.
Well, this was like when we watched, what was it? Oh, Over Her Dead Body, and they pretended to be caterers. And I was like, that's not how you make osobuco. So she ends up opening fan mail and a magazine where this is the first time we technically see Uma Thurman, because she
Yes.
says, she turns to an ad in the magazine and says, "Oh, I know her." And they're like, "Those women don't exist." And she's like, "Nope, she lives in my building. I know that person."
Yeah.
We cut back to her answering more calls on her show.
Now, I have a question about these calls, and I wonder if I'm unlocking a fun
Yeah.
fact here. Are the
Sure.
callers, like in Frasier, famous people?
I was thinking that because I'm a huge Frasier fan.
Same. Okay, same. But also, I swear to God, one of them was Eddie Murphy, or someone doing their best Eddie Murphy doing an impression bit.
I think it was someone doing an Eddie Murphy.
Okay.
personally.
I started to think that they were the same people over and over again trying to do different voices.
Okay.
With the exception of Brian, who we're going to meet next,
Right.
or at least hear next, who has a dog in roller skates because they were trying to do a photo shoot. So they just got a dog from the pound and put it in roller skates.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what you would do, Paige. Why is that
It's all-
weird? I don't.
It's also basically the dog from the Sandlot. So
Yeah.
it's a big monster dog in roller skates. And now they can't get him out of the roller skates, which, although I would say is potentially animal abuse, very funny to watch.
It is very funny. Yeah.
Mhm.
I hope this dog was trained and didn't hurt himself doing this.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm
sure.
sure.
Yeah, an experienced dog actor.
Dactyl?
Yeah, I will say that this feature of the film is one of the reasons why this movie was so important to me and my mom, because fun fact about my mom, Barbara Lynn Shire Hafke, if there's a movie out there that has a pet, particularly a dog, that has any sort of discernible personality, my mom will love it. and defend it until the day she dies. And it's that kind of film. And so that's her thing. So, yeah.
I mean, there's no rules that says that a dog can't roller skate.
I've never read a law saying it shouldn't.
It's just weird logic, though, that like a photographer would be like, oh, I need a dog for this photo shoot. I'll go adopt one from the pound.
I know.
Even in the 90s? Like, I could see that in like maybe the 60s when like no one had an idea of like, social responsibility when it came to the welfare of animals.
Oh, yeah. Like when that photographer would do the photo shoot and then kill the dog afterwards because they had no use for it. Because the 60s were a dark, bleak time.
A terrible, dark, bleak time.
Yeah.
I also just feel like if you attempt this, you don't know how dogs work.
Yeah.
Because like my previous cat, Dennis, who passed away, one time a friend was like, can I use your cat for a video? And I was like, what do you need him to do? And he was like, well, I just need him to like chase a string and chase a laser. And I'm like, okay, maybe, but I can't make any promises. It's a cat. They're going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah,
like
cats don't care. That's like their one discernible quality. And I love that about cats. They either will care a lot about something for a very short amount of time or about nothing ever.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we then had to spend 3 hours
Oh, God.
with a cat that was not gonna chase or play with anything.
Yeah. He was just like, you know what, Mom? I don't feline like it.
Yeah.
Hey, Dennis, chase this light. Fuck you. I'm not doing shit. I had to go in a car. Fuck you, Mom.
Exactly. I applied the same logic to the dog, who's just like, now my feet roll. What's happening? But so she kind of talks him through over the phone, calming the dog down so that he can get the skates off, and then convinces him to keep the dog.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, the dog seems like a total sweetheart.
Yeah.
That's good.
love that dog. That's a cute dog.
It is a very cute dog.
Cute dog.
I'm the kind of guy that when like I'm out for walks around my neighborhood, like if I see a dog, I'm like, oh, a dog. Like I love dogs. I just moved to this place like 7 months ago. I know all the dogs' names on the street. I don't know any of my neighbors' names. Like that's just, I know Lucy, I know Scott, like I know all of them, but all of those people are dogs.
Scott?
Yeah.
There's a dog named Scott?
They call him Great. He's a Great Dane, and he's a
Great
Great Scott.
that's
Great
cute.
Scott.
It's so cute.
I could never imagine a dog named Scott before. I was like, is that just... Are you just referring to like a gentleman that puts on a leash and his wife walks him? Like that doesn't sound like a dog.
He presents the dog. I refer to him as such. No,
that's fair, and I respect it.
They, for the record, in case they're listening, they're not, but in case they ever do, that is not the case. But they do have a license plate that says "Out of Time" on it, which is like the license plate from Back to the Future. So I'm assuming they're just big Back to the Future fans. Yeah.
Oh, that's adorable.
Yeah. I was like, that's the kind of nerd I could hang out with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we cut to like a day or so later when she gets fan mail again and she gets a picture of the dog and is like, oh, like he kept it. Nice. He didn't murder the dog. That's great.
It's not the 60s, Paige.
Yeah. She's like, look how progressive the 90s are. We're not murdering dogs in the street.
We are like as far away from this movie as this movie is from the 60s, and that makes me feel very old.
I know. I mean, earlier in this episode, I said, I saw this cover at a Blockbuster, and now I feel very old.
Yeah.
Yeah, that memory hit me right in the feels, Paige.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
just Blockbusters and seeing the VHS covers. Like, oh my God.
When I realized we had that as a shared experience, my knees and back already gave out. Like they were like, oh, I'm just too old to live.
No.
Just the calcium in your bones siphoned out just a little bit.
I felt osteoporosis take me in that moment.
I should have drank more milk like the commercial said. So her phone rings and
Yes.
it's Brian. And he opens the conversation with, we slept together, and then has to clarify that it's him and the dog.
But he never clarifies not sexually. And that bothered me because it's weird that you would start off that way.
It is. I mean, you think that conversation's gonna go one way and it goes another, because it very
Yes.
well could go, we slept together and I just don't know how he feels and if it's gonna be long term or if this was a one-time thing, and like I know I bought him the skates and a dog bed, but like, am I just a meal ticket to you? Like that's what you expect it to be.
Yeah, absolutely, Paige. And listen, I get sometimes your first night with a dog can be rough.
Oh no.
But like you gotta feel it out. Like if they're still there in the morning, breakfast, right? But if they ghosted you, like whatever, we're gonna move on to the next bitch. I'm trying to force in all the dog puns I can. Should we just move on?
And you missed the one about his favorite position, missionary.
Damn you, Paige! I love it.
It's very traditional.
Yes.
Yeah. He's a dog that sticks to his principles.
Knows what he likes.
He likes eye contact.
Intimacy.
It's just him drooling all over you because it's like he's on top and he's going to town, but he's like still got those jowls just like dripping saliva all over you.
I like that we all pictured the dog on top. I think that was great. So he asks her out over the phone and is like, I want to meet you in person. And he's kind of persistent about it, which, as somebody who has people that listen to their voice on a regular basis.
Yes, Paige.
No.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So like I was very concerned at his level of commitment to like wanting to like date her from just hearing her voice, especially for someone who has what I would assume is the vocal equivalent of face blindness, because he like never
can't
recognizes
tell their
her.
voices apart.
Yes. And they don't sound at all alike. It drove me insane the entire movie when they were in the same room together. I was like, you would know.
As a lady, if somebody somehow got my phone number, I guess because he called it.
Yeah, he called the office. Like that made sense to
Yeah.
me because he called the station.
So if somebody contacted me and was like, I need to meet you, I'd be like, I'm not answering.
I need your name and phone number so I can report this call to the police.
Yeah, stalker. Like,
Yeah.
No, thank you. Now, it's one thing if I'm like, hey, we're doing a thing. I'm going to be there.
Yeah, come to the meetup. Watch a movie.
Yeah, I'm controlling the situation
Yeah.
at that point. But if you're just like, I'll be at your house in 10 minutes. No, you won't, Jeffrey Dahmer. No, you won't.
You ain't gonna eat me.
Yeah, I'm going to live today. So that's where this movie breaks down for me. Now, granted, she does bring that up and is just like, I don't know you. And describes Uma Thurman instead. I think in her mind thinking that she's never going to meet up with this person.
Oh,
At least
yeah.
during this initial call.
Well, so my thoughts on that are that conversation could have gone differently if he hadn't said, "Oh, hey, what do you look like?"
Yes.
So that
Yeah.
I know so that I know what to look out for. I think if they had just left it, she probably would have been like, "I'll take a chance. I'll maybe go and meet him in person." But I think being put on the spot
Yeah.
to describe how she looked was the impetus for her being like, "Oh, fuck it. I can't describe myself. I'm just going to describe this
Yeah.
centerfold in front of me that my producer irresponsibly has in his office. HR is going to give you a call, sir. That's not appropriate.
This is still a workplace, you
This
monster.
is a workplace environment. Please do not subject your fellow employees and coworkers to that. It's weird."
It was the 90s, which is like half of the 60s. It's amazing it wasn't nude.
Well, this is also in Splash when John Candy shows up and
Oh,
hands out his
yeah.
copies of Penthouse.
Yeah.
That's what this reminded me of.
Yeah. But yeah, I do think that serves a purpose in the movie, though. The whole, like, what do you look like conversation, Kyle? Because it gives the opportunity for Janeane Garofalo to be like, ugh. You know, like, I'm such a homely girl, which she's not at all.
She's not. And
Yeah.
she's still not. She's looking
No.
great.
She looks amazing right now. I don't know if you've seen her recently. She's in
have.
amazing shape. She
Yep.
looks great.
Yeah, she
Yep.
looks wonderful and does in this movie, too. Like,
What's your favorite Janeane Garofalo? I think mine is Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion.
Yep. Sorry.
Yes.
That's to have to give you the double high five on that because Heather
Yep.
Mooney is.
Yes.
I have been Heather Mooney so many times at gay bars, at parties, at friend functions. I have been Heather Mooney. Okay, Toby, fuck off. Just going outside to have a cigarette and not be a part.
Chain smoke and then end up making out with a hot cowboy. Good
Exactly.
for you, Heather Mooney. Good for
Exactly.
you.
Good for you. I also liked her in, she had a cameo in The Cable Guy.
oh,
Yes.
shit, I forgot about that.
Yes. No, sir, there are no utensils during medieval times, thus there are no utensils at medieval times. Would you like a refill on that Pepsi?
Wow, you know, not only she had a cameo, also her line.
I love Janeane Garofalo. Also, I've been to medieval times.
No, Kyle's like, I used to work there.
One of my close friends actually did work there for many years.
Yeah.
The one in Schaumburg, Illinois.
Oh, shit, I've been to Schaumburg. That's a dark place.
Yeah, home of the Woodfield Mall, and that's it. All life
Yeah.
is centered around Woodfield Mall.
Oh, man, okay. Yeah, I hope they're safe.
So he shows up at the place where they said to meet. She doesn't show up. Meanwhile, she's at home playing the violin with her cat. Because you know what? single ladies have hobbies and that's fine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She's not playing that violin, though. Like, she is not even trying to look like she's playing that violin.
I don't know why they gave that to her as a hobby. She has enough weird things about her.
Yeah.
She's a vet with a radio show / podcast and a cool cat, and she's a smart lady. Why do we need more than that? I don't know why she also had to have the violin. It's kind of like in Never Been Kissed where she has the cross-stitching pillows, and you're just like, why also this? I don't know. But as she's playing violin, she hears outside that Uma Thurman and her boyfriend, Roy, are fighting. And I don't know if you heard the dialogue of that fight, but he's telling her to change her dress because it makes her look fat. Meanwhile, this is full buggy eye baby deer Uma Thurman with not a stitch of fat on her.
No, this is Gattaca Uma Thurman. She's like 98 pounds, but 6'1". Like, she's very tiny.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And little 5'1" Janeane Garofalo intervenes, and he does break her violin bow, but he also does leave. He does also, though, say that she is an ugly, dumb bitch.
Well, he calls them both dumb bitches. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
right.
but then there's another moment where he calls someone a dumb bitch. Sorry, he calls Uma Thurman a dumb bitch, and then when Janeane Garofalo intervenes, she
That's
says,
right.
"Oh, I'm sorry. Did you call my name?"
Yeah.
And
yeah.
and they're like, "What?" And she goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. I heard dumb bitch, so I thought you must have been referring to me." And then I guess during that time, like Janeane Garofalo like hated that line. Because she quote unquote does not believe in reclaiming words, I suppose. I don't know. She apparently had a really hard time with that scene, which is pretty understandable, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I don't know. It's interesting. It's
Mm-hmm.
knowing what I know about how she felt about that film, watching it now, it's my heart goes out for her.
It's like a
Yeah.
different experience, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I feel like if somebody called me an ugly, dumb bitch, at this point,
Oh,
with
God.
the things that have been said to me at Rose Battle, I'd just be like, do better. Like,
That's
weak
exactly
shit.
what I was thinking, Paige. I was
That's
like,
it.
I feel bad for anyone who calls you a dumb bitch because your ability to read someone and then destroy their soul in like under 5 seconds. Like, I would just, like, if someone said that to you, I would just sit there and be like, oh man, I feel so bad for this dude before you even said anything.
That happened at an open mic one time,
Oh.
and Crystal Adams,
Oh, I love Crystal Adams.
another girl, was going to defend me as a guy made a really shitty joke about me being thick like a book. I don't give a shit, whatever. And Crystal held that girl back and just said, no need.
Yeah.
And I was next at that open mic and wasted all 3.5 of my minutes destroying that guy till he cried. So you know what? Yeah.
Yeah. That is not at all surprising. I've seen your roast battles. They are roasty.
I approve.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, we find out that was both her boyfriend and her manager, and she's paying 15%. Like, come on, Uma.
Do better,
Negotiate for 10.
I mean, she's already sleeping with him. Like, why not do it for free?
Right?
Your boyfriend
Yeah.
should be like
Yeah.
giving you a discount, right? Like a friends and family discount?
But also, I mean, the differences between agents and managers. I mean, managers do the same thing as agents, but managers can produce. And would you want to produce with that guy, Uma Thurman? Would you want to produce with that guy?
No.
Noelle, you need to get your shit together, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Get your shit together.
Lock your life up,
There was, I will say that there was a stark absence of a sassy gay friend archetype in this
was.
film. Because Noelle needed one. She
Yes,
needed
she
some
did.
guidance.
Yeah. Titus Andromedon.
Yes.
Yes.
Either a Titus Andromedon or an older woman at the office who's just like, don't put up with that shit.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
what you need.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, she kind of criticizes her boyfriend and is just like, why you doing this? He seems like full trash.
Yeah, he seems like a trash person.
Yeah. And she's like, well, if I don't have a boyfriend, I could end up old and 40 with a cat. And Janeane Garofalo is just kind of like, hey!
She actually does like take offense to it though and almost like sort of storms off.
Yeah.
And then Uma is like, I wasn't talking about you. I'm sorry that it sounded that way. Like,
I mean, but also, she kind of was.
no, I mean, yeah, but I don't feel like it was malicious on Uma Thurman's part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to know where Noelle came from. I don't think they ever got to that, but like I want to know why I'm fascinated by the old idea that like that kind of fate is like the worst thing that could happen to a person.
I mean, like,
Because honestly, being 40 with a cat and no attachments. That sounds nice.
So much disposable income.
And a cat that takes care of himself, more or less? Ooh.
I know. Total agency. I can do whatever I want. Like,
Yeah.
sounds nice, Uma
Oh,
Thurman.
shucks. I don't have a guy calling me fat and stupid all the time. My life is so terrible, Uma.
Here's the thing, though. I grew up in a very conservative church community where for a lot of those girls, getting married and having a guy was the goal. And my mom was like, you're going to college. So I then was single for a long ass time. And I think sometimes it takes being single for a long time to learn that A, you're okay being single. Like, you can do it.
Yeah.
You could carry those groceries in. It's all good. And B, cats are awesome. And so I did it for a long time. And if I had to do it again, I could. So
Yeah. You can zip up your own dress. You can
I
make it
can.
after all. Throw your hat up in the air. Marry Tyler Moore.
yes, because here's the thing. Brian's situation aside, I think Janeane Garofalo has a decent life.
She's got it figured out. I agree completely,
Yeah.
Paige. Yeah.
You have a job in an apartment in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
What more do you want out of life?
What are you trying to get? Burbank? Calm down. I honestly feel like this movie tries sometimes to paint her life as sad. And I'm like, it's not sad. She could eat as much pizza as she wants and no one gets to say anything. Like, it's great.
She could figure out how to make artisanal cheeses.
Yeah. And that's why I have the cheese fridge. And now I have a husband to feed the artisanal cheeses to.
God, I wish you lived closer. I want some artisanal cheese so bad.
Kyle, you want some cheese when it's
You
done?
son
I
of a
would love
bitch.
some cheese. I would love some cheese. Some artisanal cheeses.
Oh,
Anyway, we cut to the next day. Uma Thurman has brought her a bouquet and a new bow.
mhm.
Basically is apologizing.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty sweet.
Yeah. And she reveals that she wants to be a newscaster because newscasters know everything. And Janeane Garofalo is like, yes, people tell them ahead of time. Like that's how that
That's
works.
how the news works.
The way they paint Uma as like dumb sort of makes me sad for her.
There are a lot of things in this movie that make me sad for Uma.
Yeah.
But that's where a confident, sassy gay friend could have come in and been like, bitch, you are smart. I don't know why you're listening to any of these people.
Yeah.
Get a nice dress. We're going out. We're gonna get brunch. Fuck Roy. Who gives a shit?
I killed Roy before I came over here. I ran him over with my car. And
He's in the back of the Subaru. We got nice shovels. We're going to bury him and try not to ruin our manicures. Don't worry about it.
we're going to bury him in Palm Springs and then go party and get brunch in the desert.
Yes. There's a lot of desert.
A lot of desert.
But not a lot of Roy anymore, so
No.
it'll be real easy to get rid of that body.
My one criticism of sassy gay friend representation in media is that not enough of them were just like, I'm just going to murder him for you. I'm just going to murder this guy for you. How about that? Gay men can be aggressive too, you know.
They can. They can be. More? No, that's going to sound bad. I was going to say more gay murderers. And I'm like, no, Paige, that's not
not
what
that.
he was getting at.
Not that. Not murderers. Just, extreme justice providers.
Friends willing to suggest it until
Yeah.
we all come to our senses, eat our Eggs Benedict, and decide to move on with our lives in a healthier direction.
Yes.
So they decide to play hooky and get a cappuccino. Or at least that's what she suggests. And I'm like, it's a radio show.
And also, she's already at work. Like, you can't be like, hey, I'm sick, but you're not.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you. You just did an hour of your 2-hour radio show. Like, you're not sick.
Yeah, I can't come.
That was the thing that
I'm
they played
sick.
around with on Frasier a lot, though. Whenever he couldn't go to his daily radio show, they always were like, "Oh, we'll just play some old episodes or something." And I'm like, I don't think that's how radio works.
I mean, I know they have the ability to do that. Like, I know that exists and has happened in history, but you can't do it all the time. I don't think,
Right?
you know?
Yeah, it's not like something be like, "Oh yeah, I'm just gonna potentially get fired so I can go have a cappuccino with the model who lives down the corner from me."
Right. Also, it's not like cappuccinos are only happening for a limited time. They happen all the time.
It's not like they're about to lose the pumpkin spice. It'll be there later.
Yeah. But as they're kind of talking about doing this, Ben the stalker shows up at the office looking for her. Like, see, this is what I fear from that original phone call. Is him like showing up at work and being like, I want to wear your skin.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to happen
This
next.
is wildly inappropriate behavior.
Honestly, Paige, like through that lens, Brian's behavior in this film is incredibly problematic in a lot of ways, in a lot of facets. And viewing it as an adult, looking back on it, yeah, it definitely has that idea behind it. I'm not okay with it now. I don't know why I made you watch this film.
This was your choice, Kyle.
This was my idea. I was late. It's a cascade of bad things that I've put upon your houses today.
Don't feel bad, because this happens in so many movies from the 90s and early 2000s where you're just like, oh, he stalked her.
Yeah.
Think about stalking and then go back and watch The Notebook again and tell me how that goes for you. Because
I stalked you every day for a year.
It's not over. It's still not over. I know where you live. So he shows up at the lobby of this high rise where they're not checking anyone's IDs, which I could not fathom. Kyle, can you imagine a high rise in Los Angeles that just lets anybody in?
No.
Yep.
Then again, I mean, it is the 90s, but like, I feel like even then, like, I don't know, that's just kind of weird, especially if it's like a media building, you know?
Yeah, because he literally he sees the like pictures, and she just has a picture of a dog and a cat as opposed to her face. But then he's able to literally just like walk into her studio. No one stops him. No one asks any questions. This is a mass shooting event waiting to happen.
That is weird.
Yeah,
But this is like mid 90s, right? Like
97, I think, 96.
Yeah.
So I doubt Columbine had happened, that had started all of that stuff. So I bet some of that stuff. I can't remember exactly when Columbine happened. It happened when I was in high school, but pretty sure it was late 90s though, right?
Wow, this took a turn. We were talking about...
Listen, Kyle, I don't know if you've listened to the show before. It's fine if you haven't. We talk about Columbine every episode. It's like
holy shit. No, okay, all right.
No, I think you're right, because that's something we ran into with another movie.
Never Been Kissed.
Yes, that and I think it is just 2020 lens looking back and being like,
yeah,
what do you mean there's no metal detectors? So yeah, but that did strike me as weird that no one seems to question a stranger just walking up into a recording studio, and letting his dog loose into the studio, where at a certain point it gets locked in with what he believes is Abby because she matches the description,
right?
But then actual Abby comes in, and before he can get into the recording studio to retrieve the dog, she fills Uma Thurman in on what's going on, and she then essentially buzzes him in, and Uma Thurman pretends to be Abby. And he even mentions, he's like, you sound completely different. And I do love her response of, you should hear me in the shower, which is crazy, but great. And then she tells him that microphones make her voice sound different. And he says, well, I didn't want you to think I was some weirdo. And I was like, by stalking her and showing up at her office?
With a dog.
Yeah.
With a dog?
That you have claimed to have slept with.
And that's just how you start conversations, too. Like, that's just, that's the guy that started the conversation with, we slept together with no context whatsoever. Like, you thought that was, a choice you made.
Yeah.
Like, that's what humans do.
This is how humans speak, initiating conversation protocol 87.
This guy is an alien in a Ben suit or whatever his name is.
Brian. The actor's name is Ben. The character's name is Brian.
I was close.
That actually would explain a lot, because if he was an alien impersonating Brian, he'd be like, I must have a dog for this photo shoot so that I may...
procure the roller skates. Yeah.
How do I procure the dog? Pound. Yes. I do not go through animal talent agencies.
But all of that kind of makes sense, because in this very next sequence, he's like, I taught the dog a trick, and it's basically just him making out with that dog.
Yeah. It's like, here, put your shoulders up here. We'll slow dance and make out.
Yeah. Regardless, they agreed to meet up that night to basically go out for drinks. And Uma Thurman, after he leaves, is like, he likes you. Like, you know, he said those super nice things to me, but you got everything confused. I don't know. We'll both go. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So while they're walking to the drinks, they do have this kind of conversation about essentially Uma Thurman's, I'll call it pretty privilege, of just like being conventionally attractive and not realizing that enhances her life. And a guy on a bike nearly causes a car accident because he turned to stare at her, which is a very funny sequence.
It is. It reminds me of John Hamm's character in 30 Rock.
Yes. With
100%.
the hooks for hands.
Yeah, well, eventually hooks for hands. Yeah.
No, Liz, I'm getting implants very soon. You see, there's this strangler that's about to be executed.
Oh,
man.
yeah. I love 30 Rock so much. So John Hamm is like exactly this, though, right? He doesn't understand
Yeah.
that he lives inside. They call it the bubble on that show.
Yeah.
Right. And this kind of devolves into a conversation about what Janeane Garofalo's character, Abby's actual love life has been like, where it's been 3 years with no sex. And she's like, yeah, they make vibrators, stupid. Like, what are you know?
Yeah.
And this is also where we find out that Uma Thurman doesn't eat, that she loves to order, loves menus, but no calories.
Yeah, she just smokes.
Yeah, she just, the body shaming and eating disorder edification in this film.
Yeah, because it's sort of positioned like that's how you be pretty. You
Yep.
don't eat food.
Yep.
Like that is bonkers. And you never see her eat anything in this entire movie unless those cigarettes were candy.
Well, no, and the cake later, and it's,
Yeah, why do you think she has a mouthgasm when she's eating the cake?
Yeah.
Because that's
Yep.
the only food she's consumed in 4 weeks.
years. No.
Oh, God, I forgot about that part. Yeah.
Yeah.
While they're eating, a bee flies near them, and a guy basically slaps half the restaurant trying to kill the bee for them.
With his hat or something? Like,
Yeah.
it goes on way too long. There are like so many things in this movie that go on like literally 15 seconds too long.
But I loved it because he finally finished it and just says, "It's dead. I
killed
killed it."
Yes.
It's dead.
It's almost like the director was like, say you killed it and then give me 2 different ways of saying that same thing. And then he left all 3 of those takes in. The guy was like, I killed it. It's dead.
That feels like a groundlings find. They were like, we got to find a groundlings person for this. It's the 90s. We got to find someone hot. Let's go to the groundlings for
Yeah.
this part.
I half expected the third line in that sequence to just be like, "It's dead. I killed it. Me give penis now?" Just like,
It's just a caveman.
just a caveman. But Janeane Garofalo waves him off. He's like, "Yeah, everybody's gonna be fine. We were fine before. Like, it's fine. Thank you." And gets up to leave. And this line, I would say, aged like milk. Because as they're leaving, Uma Thurman's like, "What's wrong?" And she says, "Nothing that a rooftop with an AK won't solve."
Yeah, when that.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you know how I know this started
Yeah.
before, like at least the DC sniper happened?
Yeah.
God. Oh, wow. That's just...
Kyle, you did this.
Kyle, we've brought you here to talk about how your movie choice would have been forever changed if it happened post mass shooting.
This isn't a podcast. This is an intervention about your terrible taste in films. We're going to walk you through every single painful moment, like dragging you through glass, to make you look. And I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
And it also gets worse too.
It does.
It does.
It does. That's why I love that you love it though, Kyle. Because like I think a lot of these movies from this time period that are like super problematic now, when you were a kid, you were like, oh, this is normal because you were a kid, you didn't know any better, but also they're very of the time. So like revisiting these movies you haven't seen since the 90s that came out in like early 90s or 80s, you're like, oof, Mannequin is not a good movie.
Except that it's also somehow the best
Yeah,
movie.
that makes them fun and campy and like super silly. But man, like your choice is amazing for those reasons.
When camp is like camp or absurdity is like intentional, like in a John Waters film, it's one thing, but it's another thing entirely when it's like this was presented and studio grafted to be a certain type of movie. And during that time and for a long time after, and pretty much even still now, you know, there's a very straight white heteronormative slant that has to be put on everything.
Well, and this movie certainly has that. Yeah, you're right.
It has everything. They were like, oh, this movie's too white. We need Jamie Foxx.
For 2 scenes.
And that's it.
scenes.
Like, it's so upsetting.
And he says crazy things in those 2 scenes.
He does.
And he also mimes fingering a turtle's butt at the end, which is, I thought, one of the funnier moments.
Well, I just like that he doesn't just says, "That's not professional." And then they're like, "Well, actually, we wouldn't know.
Yeah.
We're not vets. Maybe it is."
It's not, though.
So we cut to them going out for drinks with Brian that night, and Janeane Garofalo is trying to ditch. Uma Thurman basically makes her go and implies that she's expecting her to tell the truth while she goes to the bathroom or whatever she goes off to do.
Yeah, I think that was originally the plan.
Yeah. And then comes back after Janeane Garofalo's already spilled a bunch of stuff on her shirt, which as a fellow big-titted broad, it happens.
I call it the second chance rack. You're like, oh shit, okay, second chance at that part of the donut. Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, titties, for saving that.
I just need a shirt that says, thank you, titties, for saving that.
Yeah.
Titties, you are my favorite lunchbox. So she gives him this whole crazy story about her being a cheesemaker, specifically making goat cheese.
But like imported goat cheese from a crazy goat farm that she inherited? Question mark?
Yeah. A freakish inheritance. Sometimes Abby goes with me.
I forget where it was. It was overseas, though. It was like France or some shit.
It's the south of France.
Yeah, okay.
And as Uma Thurman comes back, she's like, oh, good. She told you everything? Great. And then Janeane Garofalo's like, yes, I told him all about the goat cheese I make and the goats and how you sometimes come with me. And she just says her cheese balls make excellent Christmas gifts.
Which, honestly, Paige, I'm just saying this now, giving you plenty of time. Goat cheese balls do make excellent Christmas gifts.
It does. Also, just want to say that Uma Thurman delivered that line really well.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot to this movie that is like very kind of, paint by numbers 90s rom-com.
Yes.
And like there aren't really that many good punchlines, but like that was a well-delivered line. And if Uma Thurman ever listens to this, I just want you to know, good job. Also, Batman and Robin changed my life.
Oh my God, yes.
You mean where she's secretly the hero trying to solve global warming and gets killed by a billionaire?
Secretly. It's no secret to me, honey. It's no secret.
Exactly. Thank you, Kyle.
That's no.
I do think Uma Thurman does great in this. I think Janeane Garofalo does great in this. They're both great actresses, but like compare Gattaca Uma Thurman to this Uma Thurman, I think she had more to do in this movie than Gattaca.
I'm pretty sure Gattaca doesn't pass the Bechdel test, right?
No,
I don't think so. Like she really
I'm pretty sure she's like the only lady in the future, right?
Yeah.
Which is why she's like so sought after.
Yeah. She's like the only lady, and like in this movie, there's at least one other female character that she talks to.
Oh, I will spoil it for you. This movie does not pass the Bechdel test either.
The truth about cats and dogs? They do technically talk about things other than Ben at some point.
But in relationship to whether or not he likes them.
No, they also talk about their careers. They talk about their careers too.
Well, here's how it happens though.
I'm not saying it passes it well.
It is the lowest bar.
It technically passes, but it is below C grade. It is not acceptable.
I guess that's true. The newscaster segment where she first tells her about being a newscaster and when she is testing out her newscaster audition, those are the only 2 points. Because every other time, it's either Uma Thurman leaving voicemail so they're not on screen at the same time.
Yes.
Or it's when Janeane Garofalo is talking to one of the callers on her show and again, they're not on the screen at the same time. But the newscaster segment's the only part that passes.
And they don't have a name, so that also wouldn't, because don't they have to be named characters?
They do. The test has 2 named characters who talk to each other about something that's not a man. Those are like the 3 tests. I just looked it up. So on the BechdelTest.com, the truth about cats or dogs does pass all 3 tests. Gattaca does not. Gattaca only has 2 named female characters, but they never speak.
Oh,
that's what it says. Yeah, that's hilarious. Brutal. Yeah.
Anyway, so they don't quite hit it off. She thinks that Brian is not into her at all. He's super into Uma Thurman. But they do go back to his loft where they get to see all his photography, and she immediately connects with that dog.
Janeane Garofalo does.
Yeah, which I think should have been the first clue.
Outside of her voice, yes.
Right.
She's not wearing Clark Kent's glasses on her voice. Like, I don't understand how he never realizes that the woman who sounds exactly like the woman he fell in quote-unquote love with over the radio is Janeane Garofalo.
I'm really shocked that there wasn't a studio note where they weren't like, wouldn't it be like, shouldn't she be like changing her voice? Like, shouldn't she be like doing a silly accent or something?
Yeah.
But no, she just stone cold sounds exactly like Abby because she is Abby throughout the whole movie. Yeah.
Yeah, but she doesn't do anything to like change any affectations in her voice. She doesn't do any of that. It's literally, like you said, just her voice.
And Kyle, I am here for Janeane Garofalo being forced to do like a purposefully bad British accent for 70% of this movie. I'm on board for that. That sounds like a great premise. I honestly hope she sucks at doing a British accent because that makes it better in my mind.
Because he's British too.
Yes, exactly. And be like, it sounds like you're sort of from all over.
What is that? What is that? Wells?
No,
Or
it's Pierce
Somerset?
Brosnan dissecting Mrs. Doubtfire's accent. Oh, your accent's a little bit muddled there.
Yeah. This movie has a Miss Doubtfire moment, except it's mayonnaise. And that is disgusting.
We'll get to it when I gagged. Like, I almost threw up all over my computer.
Oh, man. When she becomes Mayonnaise Woman, the weirdest superhero ever.
It's one step away from Quail Man, that's for sure.
All right, we got to move on. I'm so sorry to keep derailing us.
That's all right. So Jamie Foxx shows up at the loft with his niece, who we only meet once. We don't get a name for. And she's there to bring her turtle to Abby so that Abby can, I believe, get it to come out of its shell so they can give it a shot.
Yes.
Because it has pneumonia.
Yes.
And Uma Thurman's like, no. But then Janeane Garofalo's like, that's a really beautiful tortoise. Let's go wash our hands and we'll figure it out. And basically instructs Uma Thurman on how to probe the tortoise's anal cavity with her finger.
Yep.
To prompt him to extend his appendages so they can give it the shot.
Which is not how that works. I mean, I actually have been in this situation where I had to give a turtle a shot because I was dating someone with a turtle. And we, like, for this exact reason, we had to give it a shot. And you don't put your finger in its butt.
I am just so curious about how you always find the girls with the weird pets. Because right now you're dating a woman with 5 cats and 2 dogs. That's a lot. And previously you've dated a woman with a tortoise. This is questionable. Any guinea pigs in your past?
She had 2. They were actually map turtles, not tortoises. And they were Shelly and Sheldon, and they were adorable. But what you do is if you want to stab them in their, you say stab, but like give them a shot in their left fin or whatever that is, arm, you poke the other side. Like you would poke their right arm and they would shift and they would pop their other arm out a little bit and you would just grab it, do the shot real quick and put it out.
Okay.
You wouldn't finger its butthole. You reserve that for consenting partners, not animals.
So the dog then.
Only if you can reach during missionary. That's like a hard reach. So like maybe.
Hey, get flexible. That's why you should be doing yoga. We cut to the mall where essentially Uma Thurman has taken Janeane Garofalo to like, it looks like a Clinique counter. At the time, it would have been a Clinique counter, but it's a nameless, faceless skincare makeup brand.
It may as well have said like Mac above her though. Like that's what it looks like now.
Yeah. And I do like that she asks for a poor maximizer so she has a place to keep spare change.
And her
which
keys.
Is a horror. And her keys. It was a horrifying visual, but very funny.
I really loved the retail person's reaction to that because she reacted like someone who's heard that same shitty joke 90 times because she works retail and people are never as funny as they think they are. She's just like, no, we don't have that.
I will say though, to the screenwriter's credit, though, I don't know if this was a Janeane Garofalo joke or if it was in the script, but it did sound like a Janeane Garofalo joke where she was like, where she was talking about the free radicals or whatever.
Yes.
She was like, free. Oh my God. What was the joke exactly?
It was about them staging a coup on her face.
Yeah. She's like, poor minimizers for my free radicals. Is this a beauty regimen or are we staging a coup? I don't know. It sounded like a Janeane Garofalo joke. It was really well done. Writing jokes for other people is hard. And whoever did that wrote a good joke for Janeane Garofalo, and good for you.
Agreed. This is also while the salesperson is collecting some of the stuff that she's asked for. This is where Uma Thurman runs her audition piece for the first time. And it's this horrifying story about like people drowning and another people.
79 people drowned and another 200 people were injured.
Yeah. But she's like happy about it.
When a passenger ferry
came to a tragic and watery end.
Well, and at one point she just says desperate screams, which was
desperate screams.
But she's smizing the whole time.
Yeah.
Uma Thurman has a certain intensity to her that's like, it's kind of David Lynchian. Like there's just like a really big sincerity to like every performance she gives.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that so much in this movie, like especially in this scene.
Oh yeah. Then next, the the makeup counter lady does something real mean and basically nags Janeane Garofalo into buying giant bags of makeup, which just kind of hints at some self-esteem problems below the surface, where she's like, my life is great. I've got my cat. I got my apartment. I got my radio show / podcast. But deep down, sometimes people can still get to you, and it's hard to be the strong cat mom all the time. I've been there. It wasn't makeup. It was other shit, but...
Also, they need to fire that Clinique counter lady because her makeup job was terrible.
Yeah.
It did not complement her face at all. It was terrible. Even for 90s standards, that was not...
It was very bad, and you never see her wearing that much makeup again. And honestly, the makeup she wears in every other scene is great for her.
Yeah.
I will say I had a Clinique makeover at the Clinique counter right around the same time. That was like a treat. Like my mom and my sister and I all went. And they put me in a gray smoky eye,
Ooh.
like pink lip gloss with like a berry colored lip liner, because it was the darker liner with the gloss.
Yeah.
And I wore it religiously for like a year, and I was 11. So, you know, Clinique doesn't always...
And I went to Claire's and got my ears pierced that day.
Oh, we'd had our ears pierced for a time, but we did go to Claire's and get the 10 for 10s, which if you are a girl my age, you know what that means.
Yeah, you get the 10 for 10s and you swap it out with your other girlfriends. You buy one, you buy the other one, and you kind of swip and swap them. Yeah.
Yes!
I know this vibe.
You get it.
I get it. I had many a lady friend, and they'd be like, yeah, sure, I'll take this bracelet. I'm totally not going to wear it as an earring or anything. You know, it's unisex. Yeah. It's not. It's from Claire's, Kyle. You're not fooling anybody.
So at this point, Uma Thurman, in an attempt to try and make her feel better, says, I'd fuck you. And she says, I know you would. And it's never addressed again in the film. But there was a part of me that's like, what if they just abandoned this Brian dude and lived happily ever after?
Yeah, honestly, here
combine the apartments.
Yes, I've thought about that because they would make such a hot couple. I don't know. Also, like there's several points in this movie where I wish that the genre would turn, because that's like an obsession of mine, is like movies that like start very genre based and then shift very quickly.
They both murder Roy.
Kind of, yeah. I kind of would love it if it was just like there were just these like hyper fantastical Quentin Tarantino-esque violent scenes, and then they just cut back to them covered in blood at a cappuccino shop, just going like, so anyway, about Brian, you know, it's just the weirdest thing. It's like, you know, I would love that. I would buy that.
I am here for that 100,000,000%.
Specifically, also, later in the film, when the creepy bookstore guy hits on Uma Thurman, I'd be like, how great would it be if they just murdered him right now and then just went right back to talking about Brian.
Kyle, let's write this movie.
I think it should be the modern update. That's the modern update of The Truth About Cats and Dogs, but they murder people.
I also have a real unsettling fact about that guy in the bookstore for later.
Oh, no.
Remember that.
I will.
Anyway, we cut to Brian talking to Jamie Foxx, and he's like, yeah, she's kind of scattered. She seems different in person. And he's like, she's hot. Who cares? You let your brain do too much of your thinking.
What a waste of Jamie Foxx that was.
Yeah.
I know.
This man was Ray.
Yeah, we cut to the bookstore where Uma Thurman has what looks to be like a Cosmo, a ladies' interest magazine.
Yes.
And is quizzing Janeane Garofalo on a quiz that just says, do you have low self-esteem? Which, by the way, if you're taking the quiz, yes.
Yeah.
There's your metric.
It's always the final question in the Cosmo
It
quiz.
should just say, did you buy this magazine to take this quiz? Yes or no. And if you circle yes, it's just like, yeah, you have low self-esteem, probably caused by this magazine.
Yeah, slightly. Anyway, as they're talking, Uma Thurman says, he likes you. You're the voice. I'm just the body. And then a man in the bookstore says, and what a body it is.
Oh, man, out of nowhere. Like, ugh.
And I'm going to save the fun fact about it for the end.
No.
So you can just get real squicked out then. It'll be great.
How great would it have been if they just pulled out swords and just cut him up
Stabbed him in the throat. Yeah.
And nobody looks up, nobody reacts. They just walk out the door.
So we cut to Janeane Garofalo's house because Uma Thurman gave Brian her number. So now he's talking to the real Abby, and he's asking her, like, can I take you out for dinner? And she's like, no. And he's like, well, do you want to go for a walk? And she's like, no. And he says, okay, well, how about we just talk? And we get like a pretty solid montage of them just talking about all kinds of different stuff. Like while she's making a sandwich in the bathtub, she plays a violin for him. He reads to her in his accent. And then they start getting into bed, still talking to each other. And it pivots hard into full-blown phone sex.
Yeah.
And good for them. I kind of like this scene where I'm like, this is romantic and still problematic within the film.
It's problematic because he's picturing Uma Thurman while he's jerking off.
Yeah, that's a little troubling.
Yeah, it honestly made me a little sad. I was like, well, I mean, this is terrible. Like, I feel very bad for Janeane Garofalo, but, you know, whatever.
My least favorite part of it is the mall piano soundtrack underneath.
Yeah, there's a lot of mall piano score in this movie. There's a lot of that. Like it's playing over an old country buffet or something.
Yeah. It's like, where are they having this phone sex? In a Nordstrom's? Like, what? It's real strange. But they finish up and they're kind of pillow talking. And he's like, I wish you were here. And she says, I wish you were here too. And he says, okay, I'm coming over. And this is where she becomes mayonnaise woman.
Yeah. Womanaise.
Womanaise.
Nailed
Oh my
it.
God.
I found it. She is womanaise. Because she has to like hide her hair. She has to hide her face. Like it's terrible.
Yeah.
Like she's got like I think it's a green towel she has wrapped over her hair. She's got this like face mask that's like water. I don't understand anything that's happening there.
It's a cooling mask to reduce puffiness around the eyes. The beauty complex has not affected me at all.
So anyway, so she's wearing that superhero mask and then she smears mayonnaise on her face.
Yeah, well, mayonnaise, mustard, mayonnaise.
I don't know what just happened, but that was amazing.
Well, mayo starred mustard mayonnaise. That's what?
That was awesome.
I have a video to send you later.
Okay. I love when I hear that from you.
So, and she basically talks to him through the window and he demands, he's like, throw me something you were wearing.
From tonight.
And I love her choice of one shoe because here's the thing. Now she can't wear the other shoe.
Yeah.
And also, it's a shoe. Like
it's also like not a sexy shoe. It's like a sneaker.
He even says, "Oh, it's a kid."
It's a kid.
Oh, it's a kid.
But I did sort of think it was sort of Cinderella, sort of Romeo and Juliet, because it's like a man talking to a woman who's above him and that sort of thing.
I mean,
but like,
yeah.
I don't know. It was very silly.
It's all, I mean, this whole thing is just Cyrano de Bergerac inverted, you know?
Yeah.
It's all that shiz.
Yeah.
Yep. We cut to Uma in her apartment practicing her news voice, and Roy is mad that she's waking him up. And she's taking the loser guys and how to spot them quiz. We cut to Abby comes over with coffee to tell her basically about the night they just had. And she's like, Roy is a loser. And she's like, yeah, I know. Like what?
I think she literally says, tell me something I don't know.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
you're kind of still with him, which is weird.
Yeah. But they decide that this is when they have to tell Brian, and she wants to find a way to do it without actually doing it. And so Uma Thurman volunteers and she's like, I'll go to his house and turn on the radio. And that way he'll know because I'm there. I can't be on the radio at the same time than Superman Clark Kent. And so they start the plan. She goes to his house and here's the thing. Is he kind of a shallow asshole through parts of this movie? Yes. However, he has been lied to.
Yeah.
And
True.
He believes that the woman who has just entered his house is the same person he had passionate phone sex with like 4 hours ago. And so I fully understand as he's like going in for a kiss and assuming they're going to be closer because that was where things were headed.
Yeah.
I will say, karmically though, none of this would have happened if he hadn't made the assumption that it was okay to go visit a woman that he had never met before at her job for the purposes of pursuing her romantically. And
Yes.
I'm not saying what Uma Thurman and Janeane Garofalo did was right. It absolutely is not. But maybe you shouldn't have been so forward in that front. You know, maybe if you had taken a little bit of your time and been like, who is this Abby Barnes? I wonder if there's a newspaper clipping and library montage. I could figure something else out about her on my own. And then maybe something will come up naturally. Nope. I'm just going to go right to the friggin' news station and then create a farce. Literally what happened.
It is. And he offers her a tuna sandwich because he knows that she made one the night before. They talked about it, and she's like, oh no, dolphins. I only eat dolphin-friendly food. So he goes to his fridge, which is insane, because his fridge is essentially detritus, and then what looks like a cheese plate, it turns out to be a dessert and cheese plate, because there is one block of cheese on it, just covered in Snickers wrappers that he like brushes off and then brings to her. And she basically is like, oh no, I don't eat. I order it, but I can't eat it. And then he goes to feed it to her. And she basically comes over that cheesecake for like 5 whole minutes.
Yeah.
At which point we learn that not only is he a stalker, he's a feeder.
Not kink shaming, kink shaming.
Yeah.
Yeah. And which, for me, I'm like, then wouldn't he want to be with Janeane Garofalo?
Also,
she's
yes.
gonna eat.
Yeah.
Just saying.
He's like, let's get those 30 pounds back.
Yeah.
So he also gives her a book, and it's the letters that Simone de Beauvoir wrote to Sartre. But so she doesn't understand what the book is about. But no one's ever given her a book without pictures in it, she says, because nobody assumes that she's smart, which is sad.
Also, like the 60th clue that maybe this isn't the woman that he's talking to on the phone.
Right?
Yeah. Well, other than her voice.
Other than her voice?
Yeah.
Like, there's so many context clues here, dude.
There's so many. And he basically is just like, you know, after last night, like, you're clever and smart and modest and sweet, and then you're beautiful. Like, beautiful's the last one he lists. But it implies that this is the first time anyone has complimented her on anything that is not her looks.
Yeah.
Which is as hurtful as it can feel to have people judge you first on your looks and not give you any compliments at all. It is also similarly not great for people to assume that that's the only good thing about you. Like, it's bad on all fronts. It's sad for both of them.
It is very sad for both of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Dismantle the patriarchy. I'm not here for it anymore.
They do end up kissing, which the kiss for some reason made me extra sad, because yes, Janeane Garofalo got to have phone sex with him the night before, which is more intellectually stimulating, I would say. But the fact that this is a person she is truly falling for, and she doesn't get that kiss, like, until the very end. Like, there is a slight misogyny in this movie that allows the pretty...
I was about to say, you can go ahead and remove that word slight. Yeah.
Heavy-handed, that feels like it is okay for the pretty girl to get the physical prizes for the bulk of this movie. And that made me very, very sad.
Of course, it's going to be the cis white guy on the podcast is also going to point out that I felt a little bad for Ben's character because he thinks he's kissing Janeane Garofalo, the woman he had phone sex with last night. And he's just straight up being lied to by these women. Yeah. Like, I felt bad for literally everyone involved in this movie.
Yeah. It's bad.
I think that's kind of where because the whole central premise of why this is a romantic comedy is that, it's a classic farce. But there's kind of there's almost too much sadness enveloped in all three of the party members that kind of stifles it a little bit. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's just there's no hope. There's no light between any of them. It's just this character's been ruined. This character's been ruined. And this character's been ruined. And not in a funny haha kind of way. And I don't know if I would ever be able to recover from this if this happened to me kind of way.
Well, and we get to it a little bit later in the movie, but I think they do at a certain point, not well, but they do try to illustrate part of Brian's problem as well, of his idea of the people that I'm attracted to aren't interesting and the people that I'm interested in aren't attractive. And it's the one point where someone is like, then you're looking for the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. And it's the only time somebody says it in the movie. Everyone else is just like, she's hot, make it work. And it's only Janeane Garofalo being like, take time to get to know someone and you will be attracted to them. If you like them, Yeah. Yeah. It's a sad one. Yeah. It's a sad movie.
It is.
I'm so sorry, you guys. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to your listeners. I'm sorry to everybody.
Kyle, you picked this movie.
I'm breathing so much unearned life into this film. And I'm so sorry.
So as they're kissing, the radio show starts to come on. And she realizes, oh no, he's going to hear that I'm not her. And that means that we're going to probably have to stop kissing. And so she says, I'm late. He drives her there and miraculously gets her from point A to point B within the city limits of Los Angeles in under 5 minutes.
Which means it's literally on the same block as where he lives.
Yeah, it would have been shorter to walk, probably. So she runs in and she's like pulling the knobs out of his radio so he can't listen, trying to stop him from hearing it.
But he does eventually, like, he must have had it programmed because he hits a button and it goes right to her station as she's walking in. And he hears Abby starting the radio show and can see her still walking in.
Yeah, which, again, clue number 87 that this is not Abby.
Aside from her voice. Like, the voice is the only thing you should need.
Yeah. So he parks because she runs through the lobby and he actually follows her into the building.
Yeah, he's a stalker. It's hard to break those tendencies. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. And he gets to the studio where she is sitting with the headphones on. Like, she made it. She ran up the stairs. She beat him through the elevator.
She even looks a little sweaty when she's sitting there.
Yeah. Tells him that they started with a show on tape and tells him that he can't watch because she needs to concentrate. But at this point, this is where Abby's like, so you didn't tell him, like, how could you do this to me?
Yeah.
And she was like, well, he wouldn't listen. He fed me a ton of cake. And they decide that the only way to solve this is to go over there, get shit-faced, and see what happens. And they proceed to do just that, which I don't know how they pitched this to him.
I don't know how they pitched it either, Paige, but I guarantee you all he heard was possible threesome.
Yeah.
He's just getting worse and worse in my mind now.
I know.
Yeah.
What a shitbag.
There's no way, like, what would you think if Paul Rudd and The Witcher were like, hey, we're going to come over to your place and get shit-faced. Let's just see what happens.
I'd be like, bring Captain America and Oscar Isaac too. Let's make it a party.
Put your keys in this bowl. Like, there's no way that's not like what's on his mind in this moment.
I don't want to say to his credit, but I think he's only expecting Abby because there's a moment when they first walk in where he starts shutting the door as Noelle walks in.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
and he starts shutting the door, but Janeane Garofalo kind of walks up like, "Oh, hi, it's me too," like I have done so many times at gay male parties. It's me too, the bridge troll, coming to dance to Gaga with you.
Do you guys want to listen to some Scissor Sisters?
Sure.
Yeah, no, I love that band.
So they start off, it's kind of just a montage of them drinking. He's in a clown mask for some reason, which is terrifying. And add that to the stalking. No, thank you, John Wayne Gacy. Please let me leave.
Not ending up in your basement.
I don't want to hear about your construction business.
And he is paying more attention to Uma Thurman through most of this, although he does occasionally stop to pay attention to Janeane Garofalo. Yeah. And they end up they have like a montage of him taking a bunch of pictures of Janeane Garofalo. And it feels in that moment for like a little bit that he is maybe falling for her a little bit. Just like there's interest there, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah, he even points out how beautiful her eyes are.
Yeah.
So like he is seeing qualities in her. And I mean, listen, Janeane Garofalo is an attractive woman in her own right, but this movie is positioning her as the ugly one.
Right.
So like this is the scene where he's starting to see past what the movie is presenting as quote unquote the ugly one.
Right.
Yeah.
And it seems as they kind of finish up taking pictures, he's going to grab another drink and maybe the tide's going to turn. And then Uma Thurman jumps in and is like, it's my turn. And he forgets all about the drink and everything.
Yeah.
And is completely ignoring her, Janeane Garofalo, essentially. Yeah. And she decides to do what I refer to as taking yourself out of the equation, which is a bad idea. You know, like it's one of those things where I have done it and regretted it. And it's one of those things where someone didn't reject you, you rejected you. You left.
The prejection, if you will.
The prejection.
Yeah.
This is a tough one because he truly thinks because he doesn't know who's who.
Exactly. Yeah. And I understand what you're saying. And I agree with you about, don't take yourself out of the equation if it's something you want. I agree completely. I don't fault her for making that choice just because of what is going on in the situation. Like I feel bad for her in the situation because she's like, well, he's in love with me over the phone, but in love with your body. And this whole thing sucks and is gross. Why did I say yes to this movie?
Oh, I did this where I left a bar where I had gone to hang out with somebody and one of their coworkers had showed up who was just like hot, skinny, messy party girl. And she was all over him. I basically left the bar and was talking to a friend on the phone, and she was like, "Why'd you leave?" And I was like, I didn't want to watch him choose skinny over fat.
Yeah.
Like I don't need to see it happen. Like, and so I fully understand her doing this. I think grown-up me would behave differently at this point, but that's just a lifetime of experience. But yeah, I resonated very much with her decision to leave. I've been there many a time.
I mean, I've done that too. I did it more like in high school and college when I wasn't like as self-confident. Like right now I have the arrogance of a much more attractive man, but like in high school and college, I was very self-conscious, very not shy, but like I wasn't like into sports or whatever. Like I was this band nerd. I was band president. Like I get that you want to date the football player, you know? So like I would take myself out of the equation probably more than I should have. And then I sort of got over that and I heard a lot of no's and just got okay with that, you know?
Yeah. I mean, once I stopped taking myself out of the equation, I married the Witcher. So like,
exactly.
a flawless plan.
I also would like to say, I heard a lot of no's once. I didn't hear no and then continue going until they said no many times. Right. It wasn't creepy. Yeah. It was just like, hey, do you want to go out? No. Cool. See you around campus. Like it was that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So as she leaves, she sees their silhouettes through the window going upstairs to assumedly have sex.
I thought for a second it was going to be Uma Thurman, like the shadows. We'd see the shadow play going on here. And when they got to the top of the steps, when you can really see both their silhouettes, you would see Uma say something and then leave. And then I got really sad when they continued to go up the steps. I was like, oh.
Yeah. Well, and then you get the reverse shot on Janeane Garofalo starting to cry. And I was like, oh, been there, sister.
Yeah.
Oh. We cut to her on her show the next day, and it's just like, I don't give a shit about your dogs. Like, done with this shit.
I mean, the subtle misogyny of this movie, to assume that like something like that would make her like
bad at her job all of a sudden that she's very passionate about.
All of a sudden that she's very passionate about and is very good at. All of a sudden she's gonna like, the guy ruined my day, so now I'm just gonna say these people are terrible dog owners and be unprofessional. That's what ladies do. They let their emotions get out of control of them and stuff. It's like, that's okay, screenwriter. Like, come on. You can show her doing well at her job, but being assholes to people when she's not on the air. Like, you can do that. Like,
in fact, it's almost funnier to see her turn it on and off.
Yes, there you go. Yeah. This is why we're comedy writers, Paige.
There you go. But we cut to her at her apartment, and we hear kind of a series of voicemails that Noelle is leaving, Uma Thurman's leaving, and half of them are as a newscaster, where I'm like, your audition is not an apology.
Yep. I didn't think about that. That's a very good point.
I mean, it's something that we sometimes have to say to our friends here.
Sometimes you have those friends that are just on all the time and, you know, do not know how to turn it on.
Listen, I'm taking this feedback and I'll try and do better, guys. Like, I get it. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying it's difficult for me to sometimes be vulnerable and turn it off, all right?
I was not being shady, I promise.
I don't think you know me well enough yet, Kyle, to know how right you are.
I do not. I'm just saying, I back in the day, I was a theater major for one semester because I realized very quickly that I can't handle most theater people because they're always like 5 seconds away from singing La Vie Boheme in a pizza parlor, and you're like, stop it, Renee. Stop it.
2 handcrafted beers made in local blue berries.
Paige, this is pizza perfect, not pitch perfect, all right?
So we find out through these voicemails that she didn't sleep with him.
Yeah.
That they started kissing and he kept calling her name, and so she left. But also I'm like, so you got to make out with him? Great. Janeane Garofalo hasn't even gotten one kiss at this point.
Make out with him to the point of him moaning Abby's name. Like, how far into it is that? Or does he just like moan while he's kissing? And is that something that should be a concern for anyone involved?
I mean, hey.
Kink same, Paige. Vocal bitches. Yeah.
Kink same. Vocal bitches. And we get a shot of him developing the photos and developing the photo of her that he seems to like spend some time looking at. And it seems like he really at least likes the photo. But we get more He's like, nice picture.
And then he just throws it away. I'm just
Just into a shredder, like, not Abby. We do get some shots of Uma Thurman on her job on whatever location where she's dressed as like a slutty milkmaid.
Yeah, good for her.
And I know this is not, I realize that I said the word slutty. That was more just a descriptor. No shame in her milk game.
She's pro milker.
I am a pro milker and pro her milkers in whatever clothes she decides to wear.
Yeah, shake those udders, girl. Paige, I did that joke, so I would see that face. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I did the same thing. You can't see, but I did the same.
And we reveal that she's been trying to read the book that he bought them and has been using a dictionary to read them at the same time.
Yeah.
So now here's what's frustrating, because the movie did this whole thing where they're like, hey, everyone thinks she's dumb. It's super sad. But then they turn back around and they're like, she can't read. She is dumb. Which is tough.
You say it like it's very funny. I guess it is sort of funny, but I also feel bad for how dumb they make Uma Thurman in this movie.
It's too much. It's way, way too much. It's one thing to be clueless. It's another thing to be like, oh, this person has a learning disability, which is nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
It's like,
I just fear that Roy has control of her conservatorship.
100%. You know he does.
It's in that contract. He gets 15% of all of the books that she tries to read. So
he just got the first 3 pages of every Curious George book out there.
yeah. I never know how they start. Where did the man in the yellow hat come from? So meanwhile, Brian has stalked Janeane Garofalo again, thinking that she's Donna. And he kind of approaches her at the mall and they decide to walk out together. And they spend like the whole day together
This is
talking and getting along. This is a date.
It's a date.
He spends a whole day with the voice he had phone sex with and doesn't realize it.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I think he and Uma Thurman are at least intellectually on the same level in this movie.
I'm backing away from this.
No.
You were in this, Kyle.
No, I'm not. No,
You
I'm not.
picked this movie.
I did. I'm sorry.
But also, he reveals that he listens to her show every day.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, this is always my fear, that someday I will pick up the phone for something that is, or whatever, that's not podcast related, and someone will recognize my voice. I live in fear of that day. Because I feel like it is possible. If Jason Mantzoukas called me, I would know.
Oh,
you know,
same.
like, and so he's listening every day and doesn't recognize, after they spend a day together, when they get along that whole time of day too. Although she does tell the story about her gaining 40 pounds, which made me sad that she felt the need to like include that in her stories to him, almost apologizing for it. And I'm just like,
oh, the whole freshman 10 conversation. Yeah.
How skinny was she before? Like,
I know.
That's the craziest thing.
She's a normal sized person. I don't like.
Beyond that, she's like a petite person. She's
Yes,
like little.
yeah.
She's like
She
a
is
twig.
shopping in the kids section because she's short and skinny. Like, she's a small lady in this movie.
Well, and you know, hey, us short people, we got gnome proportions. So like, maybe we don't look super skinny, but we're proportioned the way that we need to be proportioned to fit our low center of gravity, and it is fine. As the sun's going down, he offers her his coat. Now, I've been offered many a coat. Never once has a man tried to button it up around my neck, but I feel like that would make me throw elbows at his throat if he tried.
Do you mind if I try and slowly strangle you, Paige, while I'm trying to warm you up as well?
I'm going to button up this coat and slightly remind you of choking.
It was weird, though, because it is sort of like he's like reaching around her, and the whole thing seemed awkward.
Well, and it seems very overly familiar for someone that he's not dating and for a friend of a person that he is allegedly dating. Because in order to do that, she has to be
Against him.
nuts to butts.
Oh,
like
yeah.
her shoulders are against his chest so that he can reach his arms around her in like a backward hug to get that like jacket on. And then they stay in that position and watch the sunset.
Yeah.
Yeah, he even
Like-
has like a romantic line where he's like, if you're really quiet, you can hear the moment when the sun hits the hills. And they like sit there and watch the sunset. And he's
Yeah.
like, did you hear it? And I was like, but this is date talk. This is date talk,
Yeah.
dude.
It's also terrible dialogue. Like,
It is terrible dialogue.
He says that, and then it
Yeah.
doesn't make a sound because it would not make a sound. And then he's like, oh, I guess it didn't do it tonight. And I was like, you missed the opportunity to like yell or make a weird sound or whatever. Like, that is the joke you're setting up. So this whole thing is like a joke with no punchline. I was like, oh, come on.
Just him, like, if you listen very carefully, ha cha cha.
Yeah, like anything, like we could just do like a rooster impression or whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Paige?
yeah,
And then like,
yeah,
but
yeah.
nothing ever happens. I thought it was ridiculous. I also thought it was ridiculous that the sun goes down in this shot, and then they have two more like lines of dialogue where they're like by themselves in the shot.
Yeah.
And both of those shots, the sun is still fully on them.
Yes. Yeah. Because she walks away and it's full daylight.
Full daylight outside. Yeah.
But as she's walking away, he says, if you see Abby, tell her I miss her face, which
Ugh.
made me blind with. I'm like, you just cuddled and watched a sunset with her. Like, what Abby?
Kyle's
What
face right
Abby?
now is how I felt in my heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm full angry gay Klingon right now. Just all brow. He must face the Makra.
Get my batleth.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So yeah, that hurt me. Why did I like this movie? Why? This movie is every imperfection of this movie has been stretched out and magnified, and now I'm like, this is such a mess. What have I done?
Pretty much the premise of this podcast is to deep dive into these movies because all of them are super problematic.
Also that. Yeah.
Yep. So meanwhile, Noelle, aka Uma Thurman, comes back and she sets them up where she's like, I need to talk to you for 10 minutes, 5 o'clock, your place, and then tells him the same thing. So
Yeah.
they both end up at her place at 5 o'clock. Now, as she's trying to get him to meet her, he again goes in for a kiss because they have made out before. Like, she's bait and switching it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, she shuts it down.
She shuts it
Yeah.
down. And we cut to her at her audition. Then we immediately cut back. And real Abby and Brian are in the apartment. And she's still keeping up the farce that she's not Abby. And at a certain point, I'm just like, girl, no. He already cuddled with you. You have his jacket. You're Abby. You're
Yeah.
Abby now. And he has a list of the things that he likes about her that he's going to read. And he just says, okay, you be Abby. And then she just says, I'm Abby.
Yeah.
And you're like, she just said, how do you not?
Well played, screenwriter.
Yeah.
Well played.
Well played.
She just said, I'm Abby, with Abby's voice that she's had the whole movie, that he still hasn't put it together yet.
Yeah. And he starts off his list with physical things where it's like when you walk into a room, you light it up in your
Yeah.
eyes. But then he gets into, we think of things at the same time and the way you make a production out of a tuna sandwich. And when you talk to me on the phone. And she kind of realizes, like, no, he does love me. And it's sad to just be like, just not the physical part. But also it's because he's been lied to. And maybe that would be different if he knew the truth the whole time.
Yeah.
Anyway, he also reveals that he stays home in the afternoon specifically to listen to her show. And that he wants to read her to sleep and wake up to her playing the violin in the morning. Because she's beautiful. And it sounds terrible, but that last line just stings.
Yeah. It stings about as bad as someone playing the violin at 6 a.m. to wake you up.
That's true.
That sounds
That's true.
horrible to me.
Yeah. And she basically confronts him about it and is like, you would not be so enamored if she looked like, and she doesn't finish the sentence, but she was going to say if she looked like me.
Yeah.
And he argues, he's like, I don't care. Someone's appearance can change the longer you know them. Like, you having feelings about somebody can make them more attractive to you and vice versa.
Which is true, but he's making these points, but I feel like this movie is saying the opposite with what it's showing us.
Well, he's making these points while ignoring 1.5 million clues as to what's actually going
Yeah.
on. And while actively pursuing a conventionally, societally attractive woman.
Exactly.
Who is clearly not the woman on the radio.
Right.
And she starts to cry a little bit. You can kind of see her start to tear up. And she just says, I'm happy that you said that. And he says, I'm glad you like it, because she hasn't said anything. He thinks she's in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And as he goes to the bathroom to probably open the door, he knocks into her coffee table where there's a flyer with her actual face on it. And he realizes that she's Abby.
Yeah.
And he says, it was you on the phone that night. She says, yes. And he says, that's your window and your violin and your cat. And she says, yes. Noelle shows up and she's like, it was a misunderstanding. It's a joke. There is no Donna. She's Abby. And he then points at Uma Thurman and says, you're dumb and beautiful. And then points at Janeane Garofalo and says, and you're smart, and leaves it at that.
No, he says you're smart and then doesn't say ugly, which is what he was gonna say.
Yeah. Oof.
I get being upset that you've been lied to. I feel like he has a reason to be upset. But, I mean, honestly, no one in this movie should be together. This should be the last time they speak.
No one.
But, yeah, I mean, this whole scene made me very sad.
The amount of clues that were there ahead of time, like, I just don't understand.
Oh, yeah, he was lying to himself this entire movie.
Well, yeah, especially because the dog totally knows.
Yes.
And every time the dog is around, the dog gravitates to real Abby. Like, the dog knew the whole time.
Yeah.
We find out that Uma Thurman and Janeane Garofalo are friends again, but she didn't get the audition, and they declare themselves both dumb bitches, which I'm sure Janeane Garofalo hated.
I'm sure she did, yeah.
Yeah.
Is this also where Janeane Garofalo's like, hey, sorry you didn't get the audition or didn't book the gig or whatever, but my station has something that I think would be good for you, and then she like gives her the information. We don't ever really get a follow-up on that, I think, but she's like looking out for her.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's looking out for her. We cut to her at a local coffee place where she's coming to return the jacket. He does not let her off the hook. He's like
very cold-hearted.
Very cold.
Yeah.
Just leave it on the chair. And she says something that really bothered me, where she says, you know, the conversations that we've had, it all really meant something to me and it was really important, but all of that doesn't come in a perfect package. It comes in this one. And I'm just like, that doesn't make it unperfect. That's the package it comes in.
I hated that too.
And she said that I didn't think you'd give me a chance. And he says, well, now we'll never know, like a spoiled brat. So.
And then she goes, okay. And then they stand there for like 15 seconds.
I just kind of thought it was weird that like you didn't recognize my voice or like put it together yourself.
Like, let's be honest with ourselves. This is also on you sometimes. Like, this is not just on me.
Yeah, you said you listen to me every day, but then like you couldn't tell. But we do get a brief scene with him and Jamie Foxx where Jamie Foxx found a picture of Noelle as a model.
Yeah.
This is where he's like, I could tell it wasn't her because of the turtle. And he ends up throwing the single ked that he has for the dog. And the dog is basically fetching it and bringing it back. And we cut to, she's doing her show again. She's back to normal. And as they're breaking for the show, she sees the dog with a paper bag in its mouth loose in the studio.
Yeah.
And as she's basically like wrapping up her story, is just like, I want to be with you. And I'm like, the guy who almost called you ugly and then told you to fuck off after you brought his jacket back? Like, okay.
You could do better.
Yeah. But so the dog, she gets the bag from the dog and it says, put these on, don't ask. There's roller skates. And the dog drags her down the sidewalk into his arms because he has like trained the dog to do this somehow. And they sit down on a bench to take the skates off. And he basically is like, the dog misses you, and teaches him a very, very funny trick.
It's very cute. I love dogs so much.
That's a Barbara Lynn Hefke Shire moment. That's my mom moment where they're like, terrible state, and the dog like turns over and my mom would be like, yeah, see that's funny.
That's perfect.
That's comedy right there.
I would have forgiven him too, honestly.
Well, and then he continues and he's like, you kept me up like talking about you, and we wrote bad poetry. Well, my poetry was fine, but his was pathetic.
Yeah, it was pathetic.
Pathetic.
Nailed it.
And he says, I only ever loved one woman and I don't want to lose her twice. And then she comes in with probably the best joke in the movie.
It is the best joke in the movie. Absolutely. I loved it.
I got to tell you something. That night on the phone, I'm pregnant, Are you sure it was me? Actually, I don't know. I made a lot of calls that night, which is super funny.
And that's the movie. So having seen the movie, having talked about the movie, what do you guys think? Give me some final thoughts. And Kyle, why don't we just start with you? Because this is your pick and you love this movie. You think it's great? It's not problematic in your eyes? Like, you think it's like the standard of what rom-com should be, right? That's what you were saying, right? Is that right, Paige?
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It wasn't at all.
No, but give me your final thoughts. Let's talk it out.
It's one of those movies where like it's like, I think a good example is like Mrs. Doubtfire. We all love Mrs. Doubtfire, and it's not until we watch that movie now as adults where we look back and we realize just how messed up it really was on a multitude of levels. And it's less severe in this movie, but it is definitely up there in terms of like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that there were so many layers to it. And also, like, again, I looking back at it now as someone that like, you know, does I do some screenwriting every now and then, but like I'm really interested in what that movie could have been. So I agree. I know we will get to that in a sec, but like, because there's so much cookie cutter studio shit that's been injected into it that makes it very wrong in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like this is the same way I felt kind of a little bit about Hottie and the Naughty, where I want to see movies tackle this idea of societal beauty standards. I love it when it happens, but no one seems to handle it great. And so I would love to see more modern takes on it where people like really play around with that.
It sounds like Dumplin' sort of that way, although I haven't seen Dumplin'. I've only heard you talk about
Dumplin'.
it. So.
I mean, Dumplin' has its problems too. Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
There are parts of this movie that I still liked, though, even though it's trouble, because I love Janeane Garofalo, and so I think, you know, I'm not losing any time watching her on screen. I'm having a good time.
Yeah, I really like Janeane Garofalo in this movie. I think that this is not a normal sort of a role for Janeane Garofalo. You don't get to see her in this like romantic comedy lead role, so that was kind of cool. Although I don't really like the way she's presented as an ugly, tiny, like short woman when she is unattractive. She is short, but she's a very attractive woman. So like, I don't know. It does have its problems. Didn't hate it though. It's not the best movie in the world. I would watch it again though. Like, it's not terrible.
Yeah, I agree.
But Paige, you have some fun facts for us?
I do.
So hit us with your fun facts.
Janeane Garofalo,
fun facts.
Yeah. So let's start out with money fun facts.
Oof, I love the money fun facts.
So first of all, from what we can understand, Uma Thurman is unemployed? ?
She's a model. She's a working model.
She's a model.
So yeah, unemployed.
So a radio show host currently, if we're talking terrestrial radio, like radio,
right?
Those jobs top out at around $75K a year.
That seems high to me too. Like that. I mean, unless you're like a Dan Savage or like a nationally syndicated show.
Those are much higher. I was going basic. It ranges from anywhere from about 35 to 75.
Yeah, 35 sounds more right. Like there's no indication that Janeane Garofalo is nationally syndicated. She's not like that level of famous.
Yeah.
No, I will say though, just purely by virtue of her being employed in that profession in Los Angeles, she will make more.
Yeah,
just
well, sure.
Cost of living wise. Now, keeping that in mind, a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment in Santa Monica right now is roughly $2,000 to $2,300 a month.
Yeah.
So unless she also maintains a veterinary practice at the same time, it is unlikely that she can afford that apartment. However, let's update her job a little bit and say that she has a podcast instead. And if those podcast ads are charged at scale, parts per mil, and her show is daily, as it appears to be within the movie, then that means, and this is, there are varying degrees of this. If she's running one ad on her show, she would need 15,000 listeners a day to live off her podcast ad revenue. She, over a 2-hour show, is probably running 6 ads, which means that she probably could get by on about 5,000 listeners per show, but there's no way you would get that ad deal at 5,000.
No, you would
she's
not.
She's got to be pulling 10 to 15,000 listeners per day. to pull that kind of ad revenue and afford that apartment. And that's assuming that she doesn't have a Patreon and that she has a good ad package. Now, if you want a bit of a comparison for how many downloads that would be and how much it would take to earn her rent via those ads, you would have to take the collective downloads of every show I am on at once.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I would say Cult Podcast is not far off, but I have to split it, and we have an editor and research assistants that we pay. So that's why I'm kind of factoring this in. Horror Virgin similarly has expenses, and we split it 3 ways. And this show does not make any money.
Labor of love, baby.
So
tell your friends about the podcast is what we're saying.
Actually, if she was able to achieve this, if she was able to pay for her expenses with her daily podcast, that would put her show in the top 5% of the podcasts in the world. Which, by the way, our 2 shows just barely clear that metric. And you would still need to combine them to equal that much money.
To be in the top 10% of podcasts, your episodes have to hit 3,000 downloads per episode, which is like a lot, but it's also not a lot. The average podcast episode gets 141 downloads.
Wow.
Not like that's industry average.
Right.
I know way too much about the numbers behind podcasts.
No, I know. And I was like, we could get deep into it.
I know.
I would hope you guys do. This is what you guys do. You're very good at it.
Yeah. I'm a nerd for numbers too. Paige and I talk about them all the time.
That's true. I just wanted to prove that she poor.
Yeah, this is not my favorite murder. Like,
yeah.
Not
Not Joe Rogan over here.
Yeah, but if she started talking about giving DMT to dogs or whatever, putting your kitty in a float tank, she'd be huge.
Put that sedated fish in that float tank.
Joe Rogan, speaking of people who are 5'1".
Yes! Yes! I heard he's 4'7". Now, let's talk about the bookstore.
Yeah.
The bookstore clerk who commented on Uma Thurman's body is her brother.
What?
No.
Yes.
No.
Like in real life? Like his name is Henry Thurman. Like that's a Thurman.
His name is, it's spelled Dechen Thurman.
Deacon, I guess? Yeah, Deacon Thurman? Oh, wow. Okay. Not only is that a bad name, it's also a gross role to take.
It is a gross role to take, but it is interesting now that I'm thinking and like summoning the image in my head of the bookstore guy. Yeah, he does look like I couldn't see him crawling out of Uma Thurman's gene pool. Like all of the beauty just got sapped to Uma, you know?
Yeah, he's the more wobbly baby deer. Yeah. Now, also in that bookstore scene in the background are Bob Odenkirk and David Cross.
Yeah, I saw them back there. Yeah. And this is during Mr. Show. I loved Mr. Show.
Yeah. Now, let's get to how Janeane Garofalo feels about this film.
Yes.
Because she has been extremely vocal about how unhappy she was because when she initially signed on, it was an indie film that had very different themes and very different endings. And then when Uma Thurman signed on, it became a big studio project because she was famous at the time. And it became, as Janeane Garofalo has described it, soft and corny. And she also hates the soundtrack. So she hates the mall piano too.
It is 100% Schaumburg, Illinois, Woodfield Mall piano.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the mall, she says, and everybody's dressed in Banana Republic clothing.
Distressed Banana Republic.
Distressed Banana Republic. And she's mad. She says when it became a studio commercial film, they end up together at the end. And she didn't like that. And she has since, quote, disowned the film, calling it anti-feminist. Do you want to reveal what the original ending was?
Well, the original ending was that they didn't get together in the end. They just became good friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just kind of were like, oh, okay, I guess now we're just friends.
I'd buy that ending more.
I would have liked some ambiguity. I would have liked, how about we try this again?
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you.
Maybe they don't kiss at the end, but they have that conversation of, hey, maybe we go on a date next week. Let's grab drinks.
Right.
Something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Something that's more like, we have a lot of trust we need to repair right now.
We have harmed each other mentally for the past 2 weeks, and we need to take a beat and try it again.
Just reset and try and see where this goes. You know, I think that could have been a nice middle ground between what the indie film was probably trying to do and what the studios would have wanted. But again, like, it's a romantic comedy, and like in the 90s, and like, you know, these things are basically made and mass produced like Twinkies.
They're like cookie cutter.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
they have to end up together. You know, that's what the people coming to the movie want to see. They want that final shot to be a crane shot of them kissing. And, oh, goodbye. Thank you for letting us voyeuristically watch your love life. Goodbye.
Now, part of the reason that the studio took over is because this is only a couple years after Pulp Fiction. And so Uma Thurman was hot shit in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And this is Janeane Garofalo's first starring role. That's why she took an indie film. It was her first time being in like an actual lead role. And then once the studio gets a hold of it, she doesn't even get top billing. She is the main character of this movie, and she is billed below Uma Thurman, even though Uma Thurman only gets half of the screen
That's
time.
bonkers because this is her movie.
Yeah, but those are our less fun facts.
Well, thank you for your decent fun facts. I mean, they were great
Thanks.
fun facts, but they're like downer fun facts.
Yeah.
Let's talk to box office.
Yes.
So this movie came out in 1996, and I looked for it. I could not find the budget for it. So I honestly have no idea what the budget was for it, but I do know how it did at the box office or how it performed. So it came out on April 26th, 1996, and it was number 2 the week it came out. It was beat by The Quest, which was number 1 that week, of course. It was number 2. Sunset Park was number 3. Primal Fear was number 4. And Mulholland Falls was number 5. Another episode we've done, The Birdcage, was actually number 7. But what do you think it made in its opening weekend on April 26, 1996, if you had to guess?
I'm going to guess about 2 million.
All right, what do you think, Kyle?
I'm going to guess 1.5 because I'm bad at guessing games, and Paige is way smarter than me.
Well, you both didn't do great. It made 6.7 million in its opening weekend. So it did pretty well in its opening weekend. I honestly bet that's pretty close to its budget.
Yeah,
because
that
it
sounds
probably
about
was
right.
not a very expensive movie. But again, I don't have that. It did go on to make $34 million in its domestic box office. So pretty good. It didn't get an international release, so there's no money on that. And it did not record its DVD and Blu-ray sales like we sometimes get. So I bet this movie made money. It may not have made a lot of money, but I bet it made money.
Is that the truth about Cats and Dogs on Blu-ray? Fuck yeah, it is. Fuck
Let's get
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Ben Chaplin in HD.
I mean, realistically, it would have probably been VHS because we all have a memory of it at Blockbuster.
I got it at Blockbuster many a time. That this was an old reliable.
Your mom made you
box.
watch this a bunch, but never bought it for you?
It was 100% one of those movies that I watched with my mom once, and then it became like a comfort movie.
Okay.
You know, because
Okay.
it was like, oh, this is the movie I watched with my mom, and it's nice.
So do we think they're still together?
Oof.
Oh, no.
I think, like Kyle mentioned earlier, they are going to have some trust to rebuild. But if they can get through that, like they clearly had some connection with that phone sex. So yeah, maybe they could figure it out. Yeah.
Here's what I think / hope. I hope that they're not together.
Yeah.
Because how terrible would it be if you were like, how did your grandparents meet? Oh, well, you see, my grandmother was a successful radio show host and was living completely independently and was wonderful, but she had a crippling body dysmorphia and did not understand how attractive she was. That would be very sad, and I wouldn't like it. And it would be the type of thing that like everybody in the family knows about, but no one is allowed to talk about.
I agree. I also hope, sincerely, that this has been a learning experience for Janeane Garofalo's character, and that she will then go into her next relationship, whoever that may be, confident in who she is and demanding that level of affection and intimacy from the jump.
Yeah.
Because she deserves it.
Agree.
There are more fish in the phone sex sea.
Especially, you know, it's 1996. You got AOL right around the corner.
Oh,
you know?
yeah. You're starting
Or
to
was
jump
it
into
already
that
there?
cyber sex. No, it was already there for sure.
It was
yeah.
already there.
Except it sounded like you were fucking a robot every time you got online. But yeah.
Yeah. It's there.
ASL.
So, Todd, what are we watching next week?
Okay, so I'm going to pick a movie that I haven't seen yet.
Okay.
But I remember seeing the trailer for it when it first came out, and it seemed like it was the level of bonkers that we deserve on this podcast. And that movie is Friends with Benefits.
Oh, I have seen this film.
Oh, have you?
Yes.
The Justin Timberlake, Mila Kunis joint.
Yes.
I honestly don't know much about it except for what the title implies. but I think that's what we should watch for next week. So I want you to get wine drunk, watch Justin Timberlake do his best job to act, and enjoy Friends with Benefits.
Yeah.
So, Kyle, thank you so much for doing this. Yeah, we really appreciate you filling in for us.
Yeah, Kyle, thanks for being here.
Thank you for putting up with this terrible movie that I made you remember.
Kyle, this is every week. We do this every week. That is the point of the podcast. You picked very, very well.
Okay, I'm gonna go wash my face because I'm like...
Hey, but just remember, that dog has a personality, and that's the most important part.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, that dog has a SAG card.
Yes.
And also, this movie does pass the Barkdale test.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you so much. Paige, your face is amazing. I'm going to go take a victory lap for that joke. But Kyle, would you do us a favor and tell our listeners where they can find more stuff from you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Kyle Shire. I do stuff sometimes. I'm bad at plugging. I'm famous for it.
Well, and you also produce Critical Role, which I know is
a producer on Critical Role.
hugely
Yeah,
popular. Yeah.
That is a thing. It is a cool, really, really cool thing. That's the best thing ever. I'm really happy.
It is.
Well, thank you for having me on. I really
Absolutely. It was a
appreciate
joy. So, yeah, guys, if you like this power throuple that we have here on this podcast, make sure to check out our other podcast, The Horror Virgin. And that is the only other podcast that Mikey and I are on. But Paige gets around, and she is on 2 other podcasts, Black Card Rehab and Cult Podcast. So guys, definitely check out those because they're amazing. If you want to follow us on social, we are at Romancing the Pod Show.
Yes.
On Instagram, and we are at something else on Twitter who I just have never taken the time to learn
It's just Romancing Pod Show because they have a character limit and it's show SHO like Showtime.
So guys, check that out as well. And if you want to follow us all individually, Paige is at Rampage Wesley everywhere, including TikTok, except for Twitter, where she is at Paige Wesley. Mikey is at MRandolph24, and I am at Todd J. Awesome everywhere. And guys, we got a P.O. box. So if you want to send us some love letters or whatever you might send to a P.O. box, it's actually not a P.O. box. It's like a regular street address. It's pretty awesome. It's 6688 Nolensville Road, number 108-34, Brentwood, Tennessee, 37027. So send us some stuff.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to be it for us. Without Mikey, I don't even know how to do this. I'm Paige.
I'm Todd.
And you complete us.
To completion.
It's weird without Mikey.
It is weird without Mikey. Mikey, come home. Stop being drunk-ass vacation Mikey, but send me more pictures of your feet.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
More pictures, Kyle. That means he's sent some already. Although he sends them to my girlfriend. He DMs her on Instagram pictures of his feet. I'm leaving all of this in.
He doesn't ask her for feet pics. He just volunteers his own feet pics.
It's a bit that he has been doing since 2019, like January 2019.
Hey, maybe get a pedicure while you're on vacation, buddy. Give them something nice to look at.
Pump up that foot game, dog.
So with that, I will say toodle pip.
Bye, pedicure nerds.